why heartbreak feels like physical pain, because it is. You've felt it before. Someone you love pulls away, or leaves, or says the words you didn't want to hear. And somewhere in your chest, it actually hurts. Not metaphorically, not in your head. An actual physical ache, like something has been bruised. You call it heartbreak. You assume it's just a figure of speech, a poetic way of describing sadness. But your body isn't speaking in metaphors. When you feel rejected, abandoned, or cut off from someone you're attached to, your brain activates the exact same regions it uses when your body is injured. This isn't a coincidence. It's not your imagination running wild. Social pain and physical pain share the same wiring, because for most of human history, being cut off from your group wasn't an emotional inconvenience. It was a death sentence. To understand why, you have to go back further than heartbreak, further than relationships as you think of them today. You have to go back to a time when being alone didn't mean loneliness. It meant exposure. 300,000 years ago, your ancestors didn't survive as individuals. A lone human on the open savanna was slow, weak, clawed, and easy to kill. No sharp teeth, no claws. No armor. What kept your ancestors alive wasn't strength. It was the group around them. The group meant more eyes watching for predators, more hands building shelter, more bodies sharing warmth at night. If you were injured, the group carried you. If you were sick, the group fed you. Survival wasn't a solo project. It was a shared one, which means being pushed out of the group wasn't just sad, it was catastrophic. A person cast out from their tribe faced predators alone, faced starvation alone, faced the elements alone. In the environment your brain evolved in, social exclusion and physical danger weren't separate categories. They were the same threat, just arriving through a different door. So evolution did something efficient. Instead of building a whole new alarm system for social threats, it reused the one that already existed. The same system that made you flinch from a burn, that made you pull your hand back from something sharp, got wired to also fire when you were excluded, rejected, or abandoned. Dr. Naomi Eisenberger, a social neuroscientist at UCLA, ran an experiment that made this visible for the first time. She placed people in a brain scanner while they played a simple ball-tossing game with two other players, who were actually pre-programmed to eventually stop passing the ball altogether, leaving the participant out. The exclusion was mild. It was just a video game. Nobody yelled at the participants. Nobody insulted them. They were simply left out of a ball toss. But the brain scans told a different story. When people were excluded, their dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, a region strongly associated with the distress of physical pain, lit up. Their brains responded to being left out of a game the same way they'd respond to a physical injury. This region doesn't just detect pain. It's part of what researchers call the pain distress network, the part of your brain that says something is wrong, this needs attention, this cannot be ignored. And it doesn't distinguish neatly between a stubbed toe and a friend walking away. Dr. Matthew Lieberman, also at UCLA, took this further. He proposed that the brain treats social connection as a fundamental need, not a luxury. Not something nice to have if convenience allows, but something closer to hunger or thirst. Your brain monitors your social bonds the way it monitors your body temperature, constantly in the background, ready to escalate the moment something feels off. This is why you can feel a strange physical unease before you consciously register you've been hurt. A slight distance in someone's voice, a delayed response to a message, a shift in body language. You might not be able to name what's wrong yet, but your body has already started reacting. There's a reason the system had to be built this way. Emotional pain that felt mild would have been easy to ignore, and ignoring social rupture was dangerous. If exclusion had felt like a minor inconvenience instead of something urgent, your ancestors might have shrugged it off and wandered away from the group entirely. The intensity of the pain wasn't a design flaw. It was the entire point. It had to hurt enough to make you fix it. This also explains something you've probably noticed but never quite put into words. Painkillers that work on physical pain seem to soften emotional pain too. Dr. C. Nathan DeWall ran a study giving people acetaminophen, ordinary over-the-counter pain medication, for 3 weeks. Compared to people given a placebo, the group taking the pain reliever reported measurably less hurt feelings and social distress over that period. Brain scans echoed the self-reports. Activity in the same pain-related regions was reduced. Sit with that for a second. A pill made for headaches and sore muscles was dulling the pain of rejection. That only makes sense if the two types of pain are, at some level, running through the same circuitry. None of this means heartbreak is only chemical, or that a painkiller is a fix for grief. What it means is that your brain isn't drawing the sharp line between physical and emotional pain that you assume it draws. To your nervous system, a broken bond and a broken bone send signals through overlapping territory. This is also why heartbreak doesn't just feel bad emotionally. It often comes with physical symptoms that have nothing to do with sadness in the traditional sense. A tight chest, a hollow stomach, fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. Even what doctors sometimes call broken heart syndrome, a real, temporary weakening of the heart muscle triggered by extreme emotional stress, most often following the loss of someone deeply loved. Your body isn't overreacting. It's using the only alarm system it has ever had for a threat this size. Now think about how this plays out today. You're not living on a savanna, scanning for predators. Losing a partner, a friend, or a parent's approval isn't a survival-level threat anymore in the way a wild predator was. Nobody is going to physically die from a breakup or a friendship ending. But your brain doesn't know that the stakes have changed. It's still running ancient software, treating social loss as if it threatens your life, because for the overwhelming majority of the time your species has existed, it did. This is why heartbreak can feel disproportionate to your rational mind. You might logically know you'll be fine, that you'll eat, sleep, and continue living without this person. And yet the pain doesn't care what you know logically. It's not being generated by your reasoning. It's being generated by a much older part of your brain that never got the memo that group exclusion isn't a death sentence anymore. Understanding this doesn't erase the pain, but it does change what you make of it. Heartbreak isn't a sign that you're fragile, or overly sensitive, or failing to get over by it fast enough. It's a sign that your social bonding system is working exactly as it was built to. The intensity you feel is the same intensity that once kept your ancestors from wandering away from the group that kept them alive. It also explains why connection, not distraction, is usually what actually helps. Physical pain fades with rest and healing. Social pain fades in a similar way, but the healing tends to come from rebuilding connection, whether that's the same relationship repairing or new bonds forming to replace what was lost. Your nervous system isn't looking for you to numb the injury. It's looking for the thing that made the alarm go off in the first place to be resolved. So the next time your chest tightens after a hard conversation, or the ache lingers longer than you think it should after someone leaves, you don't have to explain it away as being too sensitive. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're running a survival system that is doing exactly what it evolved to do in a world that no longer matches the one it was built for. The pain is real because, to your brain, the threat always was.